Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Driving Tax Transformation, 3 Cloud Adoption Success Stories. My name is Steve Johnston. I'm a Global Solutions Marketing Manager here at Vertex, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. Really excited to begin today's presentation. But before we do, I'm going to walk you through a couple of housekeeping items and talk a little bit about the toolbar and the console that we have here so that you can get the most out of today's presentation. Starting with the left part of the console, first thing you'll see on the far left is that media player where you'll see our panelists and you have access to control the volume for today's presentation. Next to that, you'll see the slide widget where you can access the slides that we're sharing with you today. To the right of that, you'll see the bios for our panelists in case you want to connect after the webinar and continue the conversation. And then next to that, you'll see the Q&A section where at any time during today's presentation, you can add in questions. Just keep in mind, we're not going to address those during the presentation. We're going to wait until the end. And if for any reason we don't get to your question, don't worry. We'll follow up with you afterwards. So we'll make sure that every question gets answered. Next to that, you'll see there's a list of resources that you can access. These will cover a lot of the topics we're going to talk about today, including some solutions and services from Vertex you can leverage to make your transformation project a success, excuse me. And finally, on the right, you'll see that there's a little widget with emojis, so you can share your reactions to today's presentation as we go through. Look forward to hearing from you throughout the session. Well, with that, let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce the other speakers for today's session. Joining me today are Chris Caffarelli, who is a practice leader in our Vertex Consulting Group, and Gina Chen, who is a senior sales engineer. And I think between both Chris and Gina, what you'll hear is just the depth of knowledge and experience they have in working with customers throughout these types of transformation projects. So, well, without further delay, we'll get things started. So I'm going to kick things off and talk a little bit about some of the drivers for transformation, right? And when you think about the way business is today, right? The challenges that you're facing, constantly changing customer wants and needs and demands, right? The increasing competition globally, especially in a world that is much more digitally focused in terms of commerce, right? And the rapid, constantly evolving changes in technology platforms, applications. You have a lot of needs and wants that are driving that potential for transformation. At the same time, within your business, you're focused on growth, whether it's geographic growth, whether it's expanding your product and service offerings, whether it's targeting new customers, right? And with all of these things, whether you realize it or not, comes complexity and new compliance requirements that you may never had to have dealt with before, especially as you're dealing with new products and services and expanding geographically. And with all of that comes increased compliance and regulatory risk, right? So for the tax and finance teams, the challenge is always, how do I balance that? How do I balance supporting the growth of the organization, managing the bottom line and maintaining streamlined operations and efficiency, while at the same time managing all of the risk from a tax and compliance perspective, right? And as these requirements continue to evolve, the technology and platforms need to evolve as well. And when we talk about these types of transformation projects, more often than not, you're talking about your ERP as a key part of that that's being transformed or migrated, right, from an on-prem to a cloud version. And whenever you're working with an ERP and making changes to that, right, you're impacting the teams that are leveraging that the most, and that's typically your tax team. That is your biggest constituent who's leveraging all of the data and the reporting and insights that are coming from your ERP. And any impact or changes you make there impact their processes and a lot of their output down the line. So, getting your tax and finance teams included and making sure you're syncing with them as you're planning these types of projects early on can really have a big impact, right? It's a lot less expensive, and I think, Chris, you and Gina can definitely speak to the fact that it's a lot easier to get things right early on paper than it is to go back after you've done an implementation and have to make changes and fixes there. So with that, we're going to dive right in. And Gina, I know you and I talked about this scenario. You got a really interesting engagement that you had with an eyewear retailer, right? With, U.S. based operations, including in Puerto Rico. Can you talk us through a little bit about what the challenges were and how they were able to overcome them, and then what the end result was for them?
Yeah, sure, Steve, no problem. So with this specific customer, they were moving everything to the cloud, right? They were moving their finance, supply chain, merchandising to the Oracle suite. And currently in their current system, they were using kind of decentralized multiple firms to kind of fulfill their gaps. They were using a tax rate from a local firm that was populating their 1,500 plus POS systems. They were also using a competitor for their internet sales as well. With their AP, what they were doing was they were only doing AP in Oracle because all of their sales were in either point of sale or e-commerce. But what a lot of them were doing was they were also managing a lot of purchases because they were a manufacturer, and they also manufacture made to order items, right? So what they really wanted to do is go on a central cloud system where everything was automated, and they were able to streamline and also streamline their reporting. So automation of rates with their e-commerce, their point of sale, as well as automation with their AP accruals. So what we were able to do for them was put them on a central system where they can have all their reporting through O Series on demand. And through O Series, we were able to connect with their Oracle AP. So we're able to automate as well as do vendor invoice verifications for their purchases. And then also for their point of sale, we were able to put them on O Series Edge, which is containerization, so that each of their point of sale could connect to that system, even if they were offline from the internet itself. And then aside from that, for the e-commerce piece, we were able to connect that with a standard connector that we had with that e-commerce platform. So the result of that was exactly what they were trying to accomplish, right? We removed that manual process of updating their rates and their point of sale, and the taxability of their e-commerce system. We were able to automate the AP accruals as well as invoice verification, and everything was in a central system for all of their reporting. So the benefit here is clearly going from a very manual process, or in some cases no process at all, to a fully automated cloud infrastructure that allows them to operate on a central application.
So I was going to say, so you were able to deliver consistency, efficiency, resiliency, all in one integrated solution that worked across all consistently the same level of accuracy and trust across all these systems.
Yes, and all the systems are also going to give you the same results on the rates and taxability, right? When you're using decentralized systems that are manual, you're going to run into discrepancies and the need to reconcile. The fact that they're on one tax engine for all of their sales verticals and also on their AP side, it is a consistency across all of their sales channels.
Oh, that's powerful, not only for the tax team, but also the IT team behind the scenes that has to maintain all those systems.
Exactly.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks, Gina. Chris, we're going to dive into another story, a little bit different, different type of organization, different type of scenario. I know this is a technology company you and I were talking about that services the energy and utility industry. And in this case, we're talking about a global organization that works in over 100 different countries. Take us through what the scenario was, what the challenges were, Chris, and how working together we're able to help them achieve their goals.
Yes, this one was a little bit different than Gina's in the sense that they were already live with our software and our technology. We were already integrated with their Oracle application system calculating tax in these different geographies. However, what happened was they were transitioning their hosting provider for their infrastructure. And as they were doing that transition, they recognized there was challenges maintaining Vertex on-premise in their hosted environment. They couldn't keep up with the patches. They couldn't keep up with the updates from Vertex. And it was starting to cost them more and more money because they had to run older technology in their hosted application servers. So they came to us and said, while we're making this transition, is there an opportunity to move Vertex off of the on-premise solution and into a cloud solution while maintaining all the functionality that we have today. So it was an interesting discussion. Like I said, the transformation already happened. The business was already working, but we were able to move them seamlessly from their on-premise instance to our hosted solution, no downtime to the customer. And ultimately they ended up with, I guess, an easier for them to manage solution. IT got to drop off having to maintain Vertex separate from Oracle. The business is happier because we're on the latest patch versions constantly. As new and improved updates are coming, they're receiving those, and they're seeing the business continue day-to-day uninterrupted.
So, once again, able to deliver that consistency, but also, try to relieve some of the burden off the IT team in terms of the maintenance and upkeep and overall lowering the cost of ownership. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And also, again, it just shows that Vertex, with our cloud solutions, we deliver the same capability in the cloud as we do on premise. So they had that confidence in being able to see that there's no loss of functionality, and instead is improved performance, improved functionality, improved capability, because we're keeping it up to date going forward.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, that scalability, but also that flexibility in terms of the deployment options is really, really key. Thanks, Chris. So Gina, I know you and I were talking about this one as well. This is another interesting story. In this case, we're talking about a wholesaler who works in different segments. Once again, North American based, so a different scenario, but still a good amount of complexity and certainly some interesting challenges here. Walk us through it, Gina, if you could.
Yeah, so this company was actually an SAP customer of ours originally. So they were on the SAP ECC, which was an on-premise application with our old Q series for just sales tax. So they were doing everything manually, right? They were doing their returns manually. They were collecting certificates manually and storing them in a SharePoint site. They were just paying their invoices from their vendors as charged. So right off the bat, there's business challenges there, right? There's time that's spent doing the returns themselves. There's time spent in gathering certificates manually, as well as for audit proof and audit purposes. They're going to have to go through that SharePoint site and find all of those certificates one by one that the auditor is requesting. From a procure to pay perspective, if you're paying taxes as charged, one, you don't know, you're not validating if the vendor is charging correctly. And two, what happens if they don't charge you? Are you properly accruing? So there's a lot of potential exposure there as well. With their fulfillment partners on the retail side, they were having issues with finding the proper taxing jurisdiction in the system that they were using. So with that move from ECC to S/4HANA, as well as adding SAP Ariba in the near future, that is going to move all of their current infrastructure into the cloud with SAP HANA Private Cloud. So they really wanted to automate as much as they could, knowing that currently everything is manual, everything's updated manually, gathered manually, and really just streamlining that process. So again, going to that full cloud migration, automating AP with Ariba, a lot of additional tools that were able to be added with SAP Accelerator, being able to basically automate that process of gathering certificates from their customers through our exemption certificate wizard, and then be able to refresh and pull audit reports out with our exemption certificate manager. And again, removing the manual maintenance and storage that's currently with our on-premise application. So the nice thing about this one is they also purchased our returns outsourcing through our managed service outsources team, which is MSO. So it truly was an end-to-end holistic solution from them, from beginning of their purchase orders or sales orders all the way to the filing and remittance and also, maintenance of letters and notices from the state. And then also making sure, again, everything on the entire system is accurate, up to date. No need for IT to do any maintenance from a software perspective in rates, content, software updates. Lots of time saved with outsourcing of returns, and then accurately accruing tax on their AP, not just their purchase orders through Ariba, but also make the accurate accruals and invoice vendor validations for their AP invoices. So a lot of really exciting stuff happening for them in terms of being able to fully automate that entire process from end to end, and then having to be able to open up a lot of resources for other activities that are required from the tax department, like audit defense or refund reviews, for example.
That's a really incredible story, and just highlights what we talked about earlier in terms of being able to not just transform the technology and platforms, but truly transform the processes and add scale, not just in terms of technical scale, but in terms of the tax and finance team's ability to manage the business operations, manage the compliance and complexity of all the rates and regulations that they have to go through, while at the same time reducing cost of ownership, reducing the maintenance burden on their IT teams. That's a real win-win, I think, for the organization. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and the nice thing is there were so many additional features and functions that were added to their entire process just using our SAP Accelerator, because in the past they were doing manual reconciliations between our systems. Now there's custom and standard reports inside of Accelerator, and they're looking at a lot of our other Plus tools to be able to sync, for example, their large volume of certificates within SAP and some of our other test suites and other products today. So really just being able to modernize the system and also add so many more new feature functions going on the most latest and greatest.
No, absolutely. And once again, being able to address specific needs of the tax and finance teams with modern platforms, modern applications, streamlining processes, adding efficiency throughout. That's really fantastic, really powerful as well. And, I think as Gina mentioned, that story is a great example of being able to look at what the full end-to-end process is, the end-to-end tax lifecycle, and how through your transformation, you can really address a lot of the gaps in current processes, right? Things that may be pain points that may be handled manually or maybe not be handled at all with your current platforms and solutions. And from a Vertex perspective, this is where we've built our full end-to-end platform to enable you to be able to address all of your needs. And I think as we talked about through each of these scenarios, each of these customer stories, regardless of which platforms you're on, regardless of what specific needs you have on the tax, finance, or IT side, being able to truly address those, add efficiency, add automation, reduce cost of ownership and maintenance, right? And at the same time, reduce risk and improve accuracy and compliance and consistency across all your platforms. And, when we talk about that, it's really key. And, from a Vertex perspective, this is why we've invested in all of the relationships, all the partnerships that we have with all the leading vendors from an ERP, CRM, e-commerce perspective, right? And we're constantly adding additional partnerships and integrations to provide you with a seamless experience and that ability to integrate, have a single global engine that can integrate across every touch point, every system, every transactional system that you have, so that you can have consistency in terms of the way tax is determined and calculated, assessed, and applied, right? And, really providing you with better governance and control of your data. And I think as we talked about that full end-to-end experience, making sure that the data you need to fuel your downstream processes and applications is complete and accurate. And really, when you look at these numbers, it kind of speaks to, the trust that our approach to building technology, to servicing our customers really has had. I mean, for over 40 years, Vertex has been the leader in providing tax technology. And, when you look at that number, 60% of the Fortune 500 trust their tax compliance and their business, to working with Vertex. And that's not just in North America, that's globally. And, I think as we looked at these stories, right, whether your business is local, regional, national, or global, you're going to grow, it's going to change and expand. So being able to work with someone who has that depth of experience and capabilities in terms of the solutions, and the folks like Gina and Chris that are providing service is really key.
And before you jump on to that other slide, Steve, sure. I just want to add a shout out to our tax researchers. That team is so knowledgeable, because they're not just, somebody off the street that we're hiring. These are CPAs, these are ex-auditors, these are lawyers, these are CMI certified of the members of the Institute. So I really want to shout out that content is so critical, and having a really strong content team is one of the major strengths that customers keep going back to us for because of that. I just wanted to shout out to that team.
Having that foundational content, having that expertise, and including yourself and Chris in that list of folks who have tax experience and actual experience in with the technology and the ecosystems that you're working with and supporting as well. So thanks, Gina. That's a really good call out there. And I think to underscore what you said and what we touched on before, when you look at these numbers, right, the median life of a Vertex customer, the length of our relationship with our customers is about 18 years. And why is it only 18 years? Because we're adding so many new customers, right? As customers are growing, as businesses are growing, and their needs are becoming more complex, that's where they're becoming a Vertex customer. And I think, as Gina touched on there, it's the not only the experience on the front end of the folks who are building and maintaining the content, but also the experience and knowledge of the folks like Chris and Gina that are servicing folks, right? Vertex has made a big investment in our ability to provide services and support and dedicated services for our customers.
Well, I think, Steve, the biggest thing here is, and sorry, I'm a statistics nerd, so obviously median 18 years means the average is larger, right? The median's always drawn down by the new customers. So that means the average lifespan would actually be larger. That said, the reason we maintain that long lifespan is not only is our technology for tax great, but it makes the business better, right? We invest so much into the ecosystems that we support, and we enhance those particular products and the user's experience with those products, right? Because a customer is going to invest more in their ERP than they are in the tax automation. So if the tax automation disrupts the process of the ERP, it's more likely to be removed from the system. So 18 years, 99+% customer retention shows that we improve the experience users have with the ERP by focusing so much on how our solutions integrate and work with them. There's no difference in process. There's no special capability or no special thing that you have to do. There's no nuanced aspect. We work exclusively with those ERPs and their processes, and it works seamlessly. And again, it's reflected by the fact that as customers go through those transformations, we retain them, they stay with us, and we keep getting better together.
No, that's really key. And I think, Chris, as you underscored there, the integration of our solutions extends the value of those ERP solutions, right? We're adding additional capabilities, extending the value, and providing additional value to our customers. I think, Gina, you and I were talking about the value of support here as well, and the importance that plays in these scenarios as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. So the reason customers stay with us so long is because they're also getting good support, right? We are in one of the only customer or providers in the space that actually went out independently and got their support center certified. So what that means is we actually have to meet certain metrics to retain that certification, specifically just around our support. That could be efficiency, service quality, how quickly we respond, how many customer service people we have per customer, for example. And I think that really shows the commitment we have to all of our customers to provide the highest level of support, so that when there is a need to reach out to us, they can get a hold of us as quickly as possible. So I think that just really shows that, again, the commitment of Vertex to make this a long-term partnership with all of our customers, and support is one of the largest reasons that they stay with us for so long.
Absolutely. And I think when you think about the scenarios that you and Chris shared, and the migrations of cloud platforms, of ERPs, of the tax technology, the opportunities for issues, for questions and challenges to come up is really key. So having that dedicated service really makes a difference. And I think it's underscored, as you can see here, we're proud of the fact for the third year in a row that Vertex was honored by IDC with their SaaS award for customer satisfaction as being one of the highest rated tax technology vendors for customer satisfaction. So that just further underscores, I think, what you and Chris shared there. Well, we've covered a lot here, and I want to make sure we have time for Q&A. And Chris and Gina, we already have some really good questions in here. And once again, just for everyone listening, I apologize in advance if we don't get to all of your questions. I know we're kind of running a little bit shorter on time, but I think we have time for at least a few questions. So we're going to try and pick some of the key ones here that we think will be most of interest to this audience. Chris, I think this is a really good one for you. So this question is, when is the best time to add a tax engine or to migrate your tax engine? Before, during, or after an ERP migration?
I'd really qualify that down to two, is like during your ERP implementation or after, right? Before, in the planning process, you should be conscious of tax. You should be understanding your business, what your pain points are. But once you get into the actual project, you have the ability to integrate with the rest of the business in a transformation environment, right? Decisions are being made, what the process of the future is going to look like. So the easiest point is during an implementation to interject tax, to make sure tax is considered as they're designing the process of the future. After the fact, it kind of comes down to, are you sensitized for tax to a degree in your processes? We can usually go faster after because, during it's a result of the ERP. We align with the ERP timeline, whereas after you're kind of more in control. But again, you won't have the access to that transformation aspect in the business, right? Where users are engaged, users are trying to find ways to improve their process. And, again, piggybacking tax on top of that is a natural touch point. But again, if you're already live with your ERP, and you're having processes or challenges in your process today as it relates to tax, there's no time like the present, right? Engage, come with your pain points, and let Vertex explain to you how we can solve them, and then explain to the rest of the business how we can actually make their lives better too.
Makes a lot of sense, Chris. Makes a lot of sense. Gina, actually, I think this is a good one for both of you to tackle. What should organizations think about? What should they be evaluating when they're trying to figure out which tax automation solution that they should be looking to integrate with their ERP system and cloud platform?
I can go first here, Chris. So, and I see it from a different point of view than Chris does, which is great. Right? We have both of us on the call, right? When I'm looking at what buyers should look at, the number one thing is there an integration, right? Because a lot of times you'll see not every provider is going to have the integration that you have with your ERP system. How is that integration certified? How long has that integration been around? Some of the things to just is do your homework. Check to see what their support system looks like and what the reviews are for that. And obviously making sure that you're picking a solution that's going to work for you holistically, that you can grow into, that you're not going to have to rip and replace out in 3 years, for example, right? You're looking at the future state of the company and you want a product that you can grow into, not that you're going to grow out of. So I'll add that, but I'll turn it over to Chris to add any other comments on that.
Yeah, no, it kind of goes back to the approach I take with my team. Like, find out how you can improve somebody else's outcome to get the outcome you want. So when I'm a tax person, I always say to them, show them how tax and Vertex makes the other parts of the business better by bringing that structure, that discipline, and that simplicity to the process. As we said below in the reasons for transformation, streamlining operations, showing how Vertex can improve the business's experience with the ERP, not just tax's experience with reporting and filing, right? And Vertex truly brings that streamlined capability to improve experiences that the rest of the business will benefit from.
And Chris, I think that you and I've talked about this. That's not only an important reason why customers choose us, but it's also one of the reasons why we have such close relationships with our partners, right? Because of the value add to their solutions for our joint customers.
With our partners, and it's the number one reason why we get competitor customers coming to us, because that experience in the ERP is painful with other components, and we can make it seamless, right? And we've invested, yes, as you mentioned, we've invested so much in the partner ecosystem, working closely with those different providers to make sure our products integrate with their solutions the way they want their solutions to work.
Thank you very much. It's really helpful. And as I mentioned before, I think this is between yourself and Gina, that's a great example of kind of the depth of knowledge and experience that we're able to bring to bear to help our customers. So I appreciate your insights there. Just looking at the time here, we've got time for one more question. And once again, I think this might be one that you can both jump in on. Is there any other advice you'd offer for organizations planning, a cloud migration or tax transformation project? Anything we haven't touched on thus far?
I would say number one thing is make sure you have a good timeline in place and push it back another 6 months, because these things do sometimes and very often get pushed back, right? So be comfortable with that change. Be excited that you're going to a modernization of some sort, right? Document out your pain points that you have today, document out what's working today. Make sure that you get tax involved as quickly as possible, and make sure if this is a tax evaluation to get IT involved. You want to make sure that you're collaborating between those two teams, or if you have a tax technology team as well, which we're seeing more common nowadays, is make sure that everybody's communicating what the requirements are. The other thing is being comfortable that there's going to be process changes, right? And I always tell customers who are always afraid of change that we're hoping to help you change for the better and make your life easier. We're not trying to make your lives more complicated and trying to put in an automated system. So, and then also really being able to trust your vendor, right? In terms of making sure you're comfortable with the team that you're working with and that you're communicating with them. Or like I said, there are times where we also work with a third-party alliance partner to do these integrations. Make sure all three teams are talking and that everybody's on the same page. Chris, anything to add there?
I'd say, know your business, know your needs, and more importantly, know what you want, right? You can't get what you don't ask for, right? So there's a list of wants there. Obviously, we meet the business needs, but there's things that we can do to facilitate wants. But know your business, know your challenges, and more importantly, know what you want for the system, and don't be afraid to ask for it.
Definitely some good advice and some great things to think about. Well, with that, we're gonna wrap up. I want to take this opportunity to thank Chris, you and Gina for taking time out to join us and share your expertise with us. And I want to thank all of you out there for taking time out of your day to join us. Once again, if you've asked any questions that we weren't able to touch on, we'll follow up with you after the session. You can still access some of those resources here in the console. And if you want to get even more information, when you get the slides, you can click on the link embedded here in the slide, and that'll get you additional information and resources that you can access. But once again, on behalf of myself and my counterparts, we thank you for joining us and hope you have a great rest of your day.